What's up, everyone? Alex here. This is For the Love of Video Games, episode 257. Joining me today, as always, is my co-host, Daniel Santos. How's it going, man?
It's going great, man. I'm always happy to be on the podcast, especially now with this new coat of paint.
Coat of paint. Do you like the new coat of paint? You've seen the new album artwork, right? That people are seeing?
Yeah, I think it looks a lot better, to be honest. Not that there's anything wrong with the old one, but I just think the more minimalistic look, it has a very clean appearance.
Of course, definitely. And you guys are coming out of the new theme for the show, and I wanted to give a special shout out and special thanks to Enhanced Games, who are actually letting us use one of the songs from their award-winning Tetris Effect video game from 2018, which is one of my favorite games from last year. And I'm not just saying that because they let us, borrow their song, but I really do mean it. If you haven't played it, go check it out. It's really freaking cool. You played it, right?
Yeah, I've played Tetris Effect and loved it.
Yeah, totally. So, anyways, Daniel, how are you feeling right now? Are you feeling like you're ready to take over the world with this new show and stuff? I mean, I'm kind of pumped because, again, this is a brand new beginning, so to speak, and what better way to kind of start this episode, or actually do this episode for that matter, by kind of treating it as an episode 1 of sorts, even though of course this is technically episode 257.
I believe this is what they call a soft reboot.
Ah, I see. So we're at that phase of podcasting now.
Yep.
Wow. So what we actually kind of came up with was we were thinking of interviewing each other and, kind of as if we were kind of introducing each other for the first time and stuff like that. And maybe there are some things that we can learn about each other that we haven't learned from previous conversations. Because after all, Daniel and I have known each other for about 10 years now, right?
I'd say so. It's been quite a while.
Yeah. What was your memory of when we first met? Do you remember that time? I don't remember.
Nope. It's been too long.
Yeah, it has been.
I do remember coming across the Games and Me channel way back in the day. But as for when we first started talking, I honestly don't remember. Although I do remember I made some video, and it was in response to one of your newsletter videos or something along those lines. And I think that may have been how you came to know about me, and I think that's probably what got the ball rolling, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that I appreciate about your videos and stuff is we've known each other for such a long time that I've kind of seen you grow from, well, I think when I did meet you, you were still in high school, right?
I was in college.
Really? Okay, back then, okay, you were in college, and then now you are...
that was probably my first year of college or something like that.
I see. So technically fresh out of high school, first year in college kind of situation.
Yes.
Okay. So, and of course, 10 years have passed since then, and here you are now. You have a very successful YouTube channel. At least I think so. And here I am being a completely new person coming back from YouTube for some freaking reason. But
well, hey. Yeah, you had your foot in the door in YouTube around that time, but you wanted to have more of a focus on your website. So I think you kind of used YouTube as kind of a jumping off point, but you didn't stick with it. And now you've come full circle and you're back on YouTube, and now you're taking it more seriously.
Exactly. So kind of going back to what I was kind of explaining earlier about the interview part. One of the reasons why we kind of thought about this was that ever since Daniel joined the show, nobody really kind of, there's been rather a lot of people that have joined us, our community and stuff, and listening to the show as well, because there's a lot of people who do check out Daniel's channel. A lot of those people are now listening to the show and really have no idea what I've gone through, like who I am or what I like and stuff, and they're probably more familiar with Daniel. Conversely, there's probably a lot of people that have joined the show because maybe I met you guys like at some sort of con or an expo or something like that, or we were drinking at some like, meetup event and I showed you the podcast. Maybe you just joined. And we have never really done like a true quote unquote episode 1 ever since Daniel joined. So I kind of figured, well, why don't we just do that? Let's interview each other, let's talk, and, maybe something good will come out of it other than the fact that, we realized that we probably didn't know each other as well as we did when we started doing this show, which is always scary, but always actually really exciting. So, before I begin, because I do want to kind of start asking you things, Daniel, did you want to add anything before we started?
No, nothing in particular. No, let's just jump into it.
Okay, cool. So let me see. I think the best way to kind of go about this is to kind of ask like how you got started with video games and stuff. Like, how did you know? Well, actually, yeah. Let's just do that. Let's make it simple. How did you know? Like, how did you learn about video games and stuff? What was your first experience like?
So my very first experience with video games, as it was told to me, because I don't remember it, was back when I was 3 years old, and I played A Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. So the way that my dad describes it, he was playing the game, and he had gotten frustrated with a section, and he threw the controller on the bed or whatever, and then he walked away to I guess, cool off. When he came back, he saw that I was there playing with the controller upside down for some reason. And that was, I actually remember playing with the controller upside down for a few years after that. It actually took some time for me to be able to play normally. Don't ask me to do it now.
Of course.
I don't know how in the heck I was able to play games with the controller backwards or, like upside down. Like, I don't know how I did that as a kid. That was nuts.
Yeah.
But yeah, there you go.
That's pretty cool. And along the same lines of stuff, it's really fascinating to me that it was your dad, like playing a video game that kind of was the impetus of how you kind of got sucked into, the hobby and stuff like that. I think I find that truly fascinating.
Oh yeah, pretty much my family are into video games, with exception to my older sister, who she only really enjoyed Tetris, but like my younger sister, both my parents, all enjoy video games.
That's really incredible, actually, because like my family. Well, actually, I'll save that for later and stuff. But how many families are there, especially in today's day and age? Like, or actually, let's put it back in like the 90s and stuff, or like late 80s and stuff. There, that were entrenched in video games. Like. It's to me like that's kind of a huge rarity, and it's really still really cool that your family is pretty much like engaged with video games up to this day, right? I would imagine.
Yeah, like my younger sister's favorite video games are Nier, the first one. She hasn't gotten around to Nier Automata yet. Yeah, and Persona 4.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, she likes the good stuff. And my dad's favorite video game thing, right, is Dragon Age. He loves Dragon Age. He's beaten Dragon Age Origins, 2, and Inquisition, each of them multiple times.
Wow, multiple times. That is a franchise that is near and dear to my heart, and your dad has great taste. Let me tell you now. It's really
He's
cool.
also beaten Mass Effect, which is harder for him because he's not a fan of shooters at all. He prefers, swords and sorcery, but he still really enjoyed Mass Effect a lot. So he's a big BioWare fan, basically.
I see. That's really cool. That's really cool. So since like your family is obviously like still playing video games to this day, and you guys like engage with each other and talk a lot about video games together, can you give me like
I wouldn't say a lot, but we do talk about it on occasion.
okay, fine, on occasion. What was probably the most recent thing or event that have happened to you and your family when it comes to games and stuff? Because I'm kind of curious, like, because my family has never been into video games in general, so I'm curious about your family, since your family is into video games. Like, how did you, like, what was like, what is it like? You know what I mean?
Well, there have been, to answer one of those questions, like the most recent thing that we did together, I guess, was play Tetris Effect.
Okay.
And that was pretty neat. I mostly got it for them, and I only played with them a little bit, but they pretty much played that game for like the entire day.
Wow.
So that was pretty neat.
Mm-hmm.
And just recently, I actually bought them Until Dawn.
Okay.
And my mom's been getting into that. So, what was the other question?
Well, I was just kind of curious, like, how you guys spend your time with video games together. So, in a way, it was kind of like an extension of the question I just posed. So,
okay,
So,
yeah, because you're asking what it was like, and I mean, it's just what I've always known. So I don't know how to really describe it.
do you guys like spend some time to kind of carve out your schedule to like, sit down and play together and stuff like that? Because I have this vision. Okay, well, but let me finish this first. Like, because I have this vision of like, back in the 1950s, 1960s, where everyone would like, sit at a dinner table and like watch TV or something like that, or in later generations they would hang around a couch or around a fireplace and stuff and then watch TV together, that sort of thing. Is it as wholesome as that, or is it like like very different than that? Like
I said, sometimes, right? Like most of the time we're off doing our own thing, but then occasionally we will make family time together, and we'll try to like do something together, and sometimes it is video game related.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have some pretty fond memories. This is old, is going back, but I have some pretty fond memories of playing a lot of N64 games, particularly a basketball game called NBA Hang Time,
mm-hmm.
and GoldenEye. So
right,
those were games that I played with my family a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And we also played some beat 'em ups together,
mm-hmm.
because if we could find like a beat 'em up that all four of us can play, then we would, take advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, it wasn't something where we were doing it like every single day, but
right.
Yeah, we did make time occasionally where like we would all like get together and we would play a game. Most recently, I guess the closest to that would be when I was when I would play like a horror game and everyone else would just kind of watch.
Okay. Yeah, that seems really interesting because, like, again, I've never grown up with a family that, was entrenched in video games as you. So I think that was a question I just needed to ask, especially for all the other people who are listening and stuff who, doesn't know about, like, your family and stuff like that, because I find that truly fascinating. But anyways, let's kind of take it back to you and stuff, because I think, that's really why we're doing this for. Obviously, your family and your relationship with them and how video games were so kind of ingrained in your lifestyle and stuff is, kind of made, a huge impact on your life and how you view the medium. But I'm kind of curious, though, like going back to the basics, like what kind of genres would you say are your most favorites? And, do you feel like that, it's like that each of them has some sort of like special, like is there like a reason why like they
resonate?
Yeah, like, because of family, because of like, school or otherwise and stuff. Because like for me, and again, like I don't want to bring this all to me, but it's really difficult to try to talk about somebody else's experience without trying to relate it with mine, because that's when I played a lot of video games and stuff, it's usually based off of what's happening in my culture. And, like at the time, when in the 90s and stuff, when I was a teenager, like fighting games were really huge, right? So a lot of, Mortal Kombats and Street Fighter 2s and stuff like that were super popular. And therefore, that was part of the conversation that was going on. So, yeah. So, like, what kind of genres would you say, like, that you like the best? And, can you give us an example of, like, some of these and why you like them and stuff?
Sure. So I'd say I enjoy a good number of genres. Like I try not to restrict myself too much, but the ones that I enjoy the most are action games and RPGs and the combination of the two.
Hmm.
Those have to be like pretty much at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And to give some examples, like Devil May Cry 3 is pretty much my favorite action game of all time.
Okay.
It might be dethroned by Devil May Cry 5. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
As for like my favorite RPG, I don't think I have a favorite RPG. Maybe Final Fantasy Tactics, but I need to like go back to that one.
Mm-hmm.
I need to play that one again. That game was pretty fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And favorite action RPG, if we're talking in terms of like pure gameplay, might be Tales of Grace's F. But like if we're talking like maybe more like the whole experience, probably like I don't know. That's hard.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll jump into that and get back to that like some other time, like in some other episode or something like that.
Sure.
Because there are a lot of JRPGs and stuff that just, it boggles the mind, and especially now that, several years later, we played so much, it's kind of difficult to say definitively like, okay, that's the one, like.
And to be clear, while I probably have a preference towards JRPGs, I don't exclusively enjoy them. Like I also like BioWare, Knights of the Republic is really good. I also like Dragon Age and Mass Effect. So yeah,
all sorts of flavors.
Sure. It's not just in, JRPGs.
Got it. Okay. That's cool. You mentioned Devil May Cry, and I can't help but think that, some of the conversations we've had on the show over the past year or so, revolved around this series. Why do you think you like Devil May Cry so much, and what is the reason why it just keeps pulling you back into it so often?
Well, I think for one, it's the attitude, because like it has that charming feel to it where like it kind of takes itself seriously, but at the same time it doesn't. Like I'll put it to you like this: the world takes itself seriously, but Dante doesn't.
Yeah.
And because of that, it somehow strikes this like perfect balance where like the games can be hilarious, but there's also like moments where they'll bring some emotion to it, and sometimes it'll fall flat, but sometimes it'll actually work, and you actually have like an emotionally resonant moment, and it's just like, oh wow. And but primarily it's the gameplay for me.
I see. Well,
that more than anything else.
That's really good then. And I always thought that the name Devil May Cry is kind of like a play on the phrase devil may care attitude.
Well,
which is
that was originally supposed to be the name of the game, but they couldn't, so they just said screw it, call it Devil May Cry.
Yeah, which is a very Japanese name, but somehow it's after a decade or so, it's now become iconic to the series. So good job on them, right? So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, all right. And you also mentioned the Tales series, which I know that you're a huge Tales fan and stuff like that. Like, how did you stumble upon that series? Because, like, at the time, if I remember correctly, the Tales series was very inconsistent when it comes to, like, being localized here in the States. Like,
you have no idea.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So my foray into the Tales series was with Tales of Symphonia. Like many, many, many people, If you find someone my age who likes the series, 9 times out of 10, they got into the series because of Tales of Symphonia. And that's because Tales of Symphonia is debatably one of the best RPGs on the GameCube by far. Like, I'd say it and Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door are the two best RPGs on the GameCube. Followed by Skies of Arcadia, which that originally started as a Dreamcast game, so I don't know if you still want to count it or not, but whatever. The point is, the reason why so many people know about Tales of Symphonia is because the GameCube was starved for RPGs, and Tales of Symphonia was so obviously better than the paltry amount that was already there. Like it just made it shine even more, particularly because it was also one that wasn't made by Nintendo. So like obviously Paper Mario was going to be good. It's made by Nintendo,
right?
But then so I think you could easily say that Tales of Symphonia is the best non-Nintendo RPG on the GameCube, which isn't saying much because there's not a whole lot, but like that again, that's just what made it like stand out so much, and that's why so many people fondly remember that game. And to be fair, though, that if that game was released on the PS2, while it still probably would have garnered some love and appreciation because it's still genuinely a good game, I don't think it would have been as fondly remembered.
Okay. And it's only available for Steam right now, right? Like it wasn't ported to any other platforms?
No, it was ported to PS3.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, that's what I was kind of struggling and trying to figure out is like, was it anywhere else? So that's great, actually. Is it easy to find? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I have it because I pre-ordered it. And I also have the Steam version. The Steam version, I would say, if you get that version, to probably mod it because that version is not the best. But like if you mod it, then it becomes like a pretty decent version.
Yeah, that's why I asked about the PS3 version, because I did hear that the Steam version had some issues and stuff. So I was just trying to find like alternatives and whatnot. So okay.
The problem with the PS3 version though is that the original version of Tales of Symphonia ran at 60 frames per second, right. And it got ported to PS2. And it was locked at 30 frames per second. And the HD version is based on the PS2 version.
Ah, I see.
Yes. And as a result, like, especially during battle, the game looks a bit choppy. And that's why I was saying with the Steam version to mod it, because you can fix that choppiness.
I see. Okay. That's actually interesting. Okay, so bringing it back, I wanted to ask, like, some pretty funny questions and stuff because obviously we'll have to turn the tables at some point, so you can ask me things, and I'm a little bit terrified at what you might ask, but hopefully it'll be fun as well. But okay, out of the three big consoles, Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, how would you rank them in order of your personal preference?
Like in their totality?
Yes, totality. However criteria you would like to use, like, to describe.
Okay. I'd say Sony is number 1, Nintendo is number 2, and Microsoft is number 3.
Okay. All right. Did you have you ever bought like a Microsoft console?
Oh yeah, I had an original Xbox and an Xbox 360.
Of course, because you have to play Tales of Vesperia, right? I mean, you need a 360 for that.
Not anymore.
Okay. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a future episode. Let's save that for later.
Yes.
Okay. So like you mentioned, of course, like that Tales is, a series that you you kind of look for and stuff, like, quite a bit. And of course Devil May Cry for action RPGs, but you did mention that you do like Western RPGs. So are there any particular studios that you look for, like when it comes to their releases, that you want to kind of support and all that stuff?
I used to say BioWare. I don't know anymore.
Okay.
Aside from them though, probably Obsidian, because Obsidian, I think I feel bad for them. They usually get like the short end of the stick, like their budgets get slashed, or they're the like with especially with Knights of the Republic 2. Like that game was supposed to be like much bigger and much better, but for some reason that game had to be pushed out, like I think it was something like 4 months early or something like that. So yeah, but thankfully fans have like found that lost content and restored it, so that's awesome. But anyways, so yeah, Obsidian, I like them, even though they're kind of inconsistent. I guess I'd still say BioWare, even though I'm more wary of them nowadays. I think their writing can be very inconsistent.
Okay.
Like Dragon Age Origins, really good. Dragon Age 2, not so much.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
And I know a lot of people like Mass Effect 2, and I think Mass Effect 2 is a fun game to play. And I'll even say like the characters are really good, but the plot is not.
Okay. Yeah, to be quite honest, thinking about it, I'm like, I don't quite remember the plot. I have to replay that game now.
Nothing happens.
Well, things do happen. Maybe, we just need a brief refresher course or something like that.
Do you remember the friggin' like human Reaper at the end of the game?
Yes, of course I do.
That was the stupidest crap.
Yeah.
Why do they need to crush people into human paste to create this thing? And why is it a giant humanoid robot thing? Like, what are they going to do with that?
I wish I could tell you. I don't know. I don't remember.
You know why? And it sucked, and you knew it was bad because it's never mentioned in 3.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I think this is a good discussion for another time, but like I think you've clearly made a case for why BioWare has some questionable choices over its history, right? Like it's very much
that. Yeah. I mean, that being said, I do want to make it clear. I do like BioWare. I just have a few issues with them. Like Jade Empire, I think is a really good game.
Dang, yeah, underrated. I think highly underrated.
Heck yeah, freaking like playing as a kung fu like magic wizard, like that's awesome.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so 2019, I know we had like our episode talking about our most anticipated games and whatnot. Like, what would be your dream game that you would like to see? Because that's the thing that I keep, kind of coming back to, because there's so many really good games that are coming out over the past several years, ever since 2017 like hit. It just month after month after month of really excellent games. Like, if you had the talent and a dream team, like what kind of game would you make? And moreover, who would you hire?
I don't know. I guess I would have to make like a character action game like Devil May Cry, right?
Okay.
So I guess I would hire Hideaki Itsuno, who's the director of Devil May Cry 3, 4, and 5. And I would probably not get Capcom though. I would probably get Platinum Games.
Okay.
So and then I would get Yoko Taro in there as well. He'd be the script writer.
Okay, interesting.
And then I would get let's see, for the music, I would love to get what's his fucking name? Final Fantasy.
Nobuo Uematsu?
Yeah, Nobuo Uematsu.
Wow, that's quite the blend of people.
So yeah, I would have Itsuna in the director's chair. Yoko Taro is writing it, and Nobuo Uematsu is doing the music, and Platinum Games is bringing everything together.
What if I told you that two of the things that you mentioned are is already happening?
Wait, what do you mean? I mean, I know that Yoko Taro did something with Platinum Games and made Nier Automata.
Okay, well, that's obvious. That was my mistake for not being clear enough. But Nobuo Uematsu making a game with Platinum Games where he's composing.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So, not to peddle my wares, but in the coming soon video that I posted on YouTube, I actually forgot to say it in the video, so I do apologize. But Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, which is that multiplayer Platinum game that is based off of Grand Blue Fantasy, the MMO, is going to be composed by Nobuo Uematsu. And yes, it is a Platinum Games game. So
I did know that it was a Platinum Games game. I did not know that Uematsu was doing the music. That is awesome.
Yes, it totally is. And so far, he still is. And that's the thing that I'm happy about, because if you guys remember, last year, Uematsu was having some health issues, and he had to take a break and stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, hopefully he'll, come back for Grand Blue Fantasy. And of course, it still says here that he is composing it, which is really fantastic, actually. But yeah, I think that's all the questions that I wanted to ask from you, Daniel. So I guess it's now time to turn the tables, so to speak. So I'm now going to be the brunt of your questions, so to speak. Yeah. So fire away, I guess.
Alrighty then. So I think I'll start similar to your and ask, how did you get into video games?
So I have a very clear vision of how I got into video games, just because, I was surrounded by a family who was very creative and very visual when it comes to expressing themselves. Not to kind of make it about my family too much. My aunt actually was an accomplished artist. She actually used to do a lot of designs with Hanes, like the briefs and stuff like that. Like, she used to work for them, but she also did a lot of traditional artwork and all that stuff. My grandmother was a florist, a very seasoned florist when we were back in the Philippines and stuff. She had her own business and all that. And my other aunt was into music, so she listened to a lot of, 80s pop and stuff like that, and she has vinyls. Same with my uncle, who was really into that, and he seems to like his garden. I guess that's a thing, right? And and my mom was really into interior design. It's a passion that she learned much later on, but even early on and stuff, while I was growing up with her, she was really into that. So I wasn't part of my father's family too much because of a separation and all that stuff. But the family that I was with, my mom's side, it was very much filled with a lot of artistic talent and artistry and visual language and stuff, and even audio language and stuff. That when my grandmother wanted to create a new business outside of her floral arrangement business, the first thing that she wanted to do was actually create an arcade, which was going to be right next to her floral arrangement shop, and basically, just serve, beverages and video games. And at the time, it was like in the 80s and stuff, you had these like cocktail table kind of arcade machines where it's literally a table, there's a screen embedded there, and the joysticks are on the side. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Yeah, I have, actually.
Yeah, and then you just basically put your beverage on top of it. Even if it spills, it's not going to break the the machine, because it is literally a table. And she actually had it there for quite a bit of time, like about several months, until the local government said, you have to close your business because you are kind of being predatory to this college/university that actually is about a block away. Because what would happen is all of the people there, including like the preschool that's actually across the street, would just go to the arcade, spend their money, and just play video games all afternoon and stuff. So, which, if you can think about that, that's very lucrative, right? Like, as an arcade. So long story short,
it reminds me of the yogurt shop that's literally right next to this middle school that next to my house. So
okay,
it's like, where do you think all the kids are gonna go?
Yeah, right. And really, like, from there, since obviously, like, my grandmother had to close down the arcade, there's these arcade machines that don't have a home. So what she did was she actually moved all the arcade machines, well, actually most of them, into our home in the Philippines, like in Manila and stuff. And some of the other machines went to our relatives. And because I had complete access to them, I could pretty much like go to them and turn them on and play them, and that's pretty much like how I got into video games.
Wow, that sounds really awesome. It definitely a unique way of going about it.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I mean, how many people out there could basically say that their grandmother started an arcade business and, was forced to close it, therefore all the arcade machines are now at home? It's not a lot of people that can say that, right?
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, I've heard a lot of different ways of people getting into video games, but that's definitely a first.
Yes, yeah, definitely is. And, I'm pretty happy to have done something like that, and I've experienced that in my lifetime. But also, if you think about like a 3 or 4 year old handling electronics and being told to quote unquote fake insert coins into a slot and making sure that your hands aren't wet while doing that, maybe you should have started with the whole electricity thing first before anything else. Because that has happened to me, and I still have memories of being a kid, like my hands were wet and just grabbing into like the little coin flipper thing and touching it and being electrocuted just for a very short time. It's like it was that was memorable.
Now, I need to ask now. So since you already asked me, I figured, I'd offer the same one, although afterwards I'll ask you something different.
Okay.
But what are some of your favorite genres? What are some of the genres that you feel that over the years that you've gravitated towards?
I think the RPG genre is something that I'll always fall back on as something that I really like. I can go into that a lot more in detail later, but I also like adventure, and it's a genre that I've realized over the past few years that I've really thoroughly enjoyed. A little bit hint of action. Action would probably be like the third. And the way that I distinguish adventure and action is adventure encourages you for a lot of to do a lot of exploration,
Right. I agree.
and in a way it's kind of like a weird label because it also encompasses point and click adventure, which is a lot of pixel hunting and stuff like that. And that's kind of true as well. I do really like that genre if you lump them together, so I'm totally fine with that definition. As far as action goes, like I used to play like a lot of Doom when I was a kid, so it's that kind of gameplay is like really something that I look for in games. And the frenetic pacing of action games and just how snappy and responsive things are, that is something that I truly like look for when I'm playing a game. And you might think that goes against a lot of the conventions that RPGs have, because a lot of RPGs have a very kind of methodical pacing sometimes, and oftentimes like when you hit a menu and stuff, it takes a while for people to actually like do something. But oddly enough, it actually doesn't bug me a lot. And I also picked action because it encompasses a lot of genres as well. And this is a conversation that the people in my Discord have all the time, where it's like, well, what genres are games really? Because action encompasses so much. Like, I remember back in the PS2 era where EA Sports Big was huge and they called their games action sports games. I'm like, that is weird, but it is very indicative of what those games are. It's very impactful, it's stylized, it's not as quote unquote boring or slow as simulation sports. Like think about like the games in that genre, like snowboarding, surfing, and basketball and that sort of thing. So I think those three genres are pretty big on my book.
Sweet. So the next thing I want to ask you, and now I also want to preface this by saying that we have a wonderful video on my channel called Behind the Veil, a video game QA.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to know more about Alex's history as someone in QA, it's a fantastic video. So it's like an hour long, so please watch it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to quickly ask, like, what was it that inspired you to become a part of the video game industry?
Just like as, part of development, production, and QA, or like what kind?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like just basically give us a quick summation of like your journey into like the industry.
Well, this is going to be fun because this is actually, I can get into granular detail on this. So when I was in second grade, I used to make these like little paper kind of like video gamey kind of things where it has like weird buttons and stuff, and I would kind of pretend that people were controlling this character on this piece of paper and stuff, that they're actually playing Mario or something like that. And it's like a really ghetto way of like making, like Mario games kind of work and stuff. And ever since that moment, I kind of wanted to try to make video games from the very beginning, and not knowing like what that entailed, right? So in fourth grade, I actually went and studied Turbo Pascal, and before that, I had some knowledge of basic programming, but very arbitrary, like, no conditionals, no loops or anything. But it wasn't until like fourth grade where I literally learned Turbo Pascal 7 and learned how to program, learned how to, to do object-oriented programming, and really kind of entrenched myself in getting to learn like computer programming and how things worked. And it's during that time that I, recognized that there were other people, in other parts of the world. And mind you, I was in the Philippines during this whole time, right? Like my story earlier was in the Philippines, just to be clear. And I discovered that a guy named John Carmack programmed a platformer called Commander Keen, all in Turbo Pascal. And, for the low price of like maybe $10 or $20, you could actually buy the source code from him. Naturally, I had no money as a kid, but it really inspired me to actually see this guy from somewhere else in the world making video games using the language that I made. And unfortunately, nothing much kind of came into that. Like, I didn't really learn how to do graphics. I had a really difficult time trying to access devices on a computer. And also, like, we were kind of, poor at the time and stuff. So we didn't really have any money to be able to get me to have, like, high-end video cards and whatnot. Although I did build my PC when I was young. Fast forward to about 2001-ish, I actually heard that Activision was hiring, and this was a time when I was already in the United States, in Los Angeles, and I was already living, in the US for about 4 or 5 years, and I wanted to take a crack at it, because I thought, and I've heard from a lot of people, that testing in video games was like kind of like the ground level to get into video gaming, and design, and I still had this passion to be a designer and stuff like that. So I went into QA, and I basically learned a lot from my experience being part of Activision. And I worked on several video games. Spider-Man for PS1 is one of them. The very first one I truly worked on was X-Men Mutant Academy for the PS1, and that's basically how I got from where I was as a kid to being part of the industry, so to speak.
That's really interesting. I also wanted to ask, because you brought up John Carmack, and I recommended you the book Masters of Doom. Were you kind of giddy when it went into when John Carmack was talking about Commander Keen? Like, were you like, oh man?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I knew Commander Keen. I still feel like I'm one of the few people that actually know Commander Keen exists, because that's such a kind of understated franchise for id Software. Like, they've revisited Doom and Quake multiple times, and even Wolfenstein, but Commander Keen, hell no. Like, that's something that that is like a pastime almost, or feels like one. But I remember succinctly, like, looking at the text file, the readme text, and seeing John Carmack's name and the price for the source code of Commander Keen, and I was like, wow, I can't believe this dude made this. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Do you feel a tinge of disappointment that they were initially planning on maybe doing another Commander Keen in the style of like Wolfenstein, but they never did?
No, I really. I mean, it's
not really.
I feel like Commander Keen at this point is kind of like this almost an inside joke, if you will, for like fans of id who have been around since, you know, the early days. It's like, yeah, we remember Commander Keen. We were the OG fans of id before Wolfenstein. You know what I mean? It's like a badge of honor, if you will.
No, yeah, I hear you. I guess the last thing I want to ask is simply, how has your journey into YouTube been, or rather, like your re-entry into YouTube? And I want to ask this because, like, I've been, watching your videos, and I've seen how hard you've been working, and so I really just wanted to know, how do you feel so far about it?
So far, I feel that, you know, I feel really fortunate to be able to surround myself with people who really enjoy my work, and also people who are really genuinely passionate about video games as a hobby. You know, like, I think one of the things that is starting to get lost in video games is the fact that we're making this because we enjoy video games, and we also play these to enjoy and have fun. You know, like, I know it's really easy to get salty when things don't go your way when you're playing a multiplayer game, like whether it's like competitive, or in my case, like you're playing Final Fantasy 14 last night. The new content that we were playing, which comprises of about 24 people, 8 of those people left because, you know, we just kept dying because people didn't get the mechanics and the techniques and stuff to beat a boss. But, you know, but at the end of the day, you know, like, I want people to kind of remember that we do this, we play these games not just to escape from realities, but also to genuinely enjoy, you know, a temporary moment where we can, you know, forget about our current problems. And I want, originally, like, when I made the YouTube channel, it was very selfish, right? Like, I wanted to make videos because I enjoyed editing videos. But the more people I met over the past year or so, and just started talking to people, not just people who make videos, but also people who watch them, who are passionate about, like, you know, learning a lot about video games and stuff, and having conversations about them, it's made me really, truly happy to be a part of, you know, the community, the YouTube community, regardless of the size. One of the things that my boss from my previous job told me was that you know, to always revel in your success, regardless of how many people are out there, because you never know who's watching. There was one, you know, like, there was one time that I was actually doing Twitch and stuff like that. Like, I was actually streaming a lot on Twitch before YouTube. And, you know, there was one time that I had like 100 or something odd people at the chat at the same time, and I couldn't believe that I was able to do that, right? And even when I had 5 people, even when I tried to come back to Twitch, I always treated the 5 people in my chat as people who, you know, who are like the best people in the world, to make them feel special. And, you know, I hope that with every person who watches my videos, they feel the same way, that, you know, they can see the passion that I'm putting into my videos, and they really find that renew their passion for games. Because, you know, it's easy to poo-poo games these days because the internet is such an open communication tool to be able to talk to people and stuff about things and all sorts of stuff. But at the end of the day, like, we're doing this to have fun, and let's not forget about that.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like people kind of revel in their own negativity too much nowadays, and there's nothing wrong with venting here and there. I mean, that's healthy and that's normal, but to see such a constant stream of negativity from people can get really exhausting and tedious.
Mm-hmm.
And I think more of a push for positivity, I think, is a good way to combat all the constant negativity.
Mm-hmm. And just to kind of go back to your question and stuff, like, you know, again, I feel that the best is yet to come as far as the channel goes, because I'm finally getting to a point where I'm understanding what the community wants. And, you know, I think it's, you know, I love the idea of being able to make videos and learning every single time you make a video. Like, that is that gives me such adrenaline for some reason that I'm like, yeah, let's make a new video for next week. Like, let's think of something fun to like feature and stuff. Let's talk about something really cool. Like literally, like that's kind of my attitude every single time I try to make videos. And hopefully that's going to show, or rather, I hope that showed over the past several months, and of course leading into the future, because really, like, man, I love video games, dude. I really do. Yeah.
Me too, man. Me too. It's why we're doing this.
Of course.
I also want to ask, who would you say are some of your like inspirations for what you do, for all the videos that you make? Like who are other people that you look to and you're like, those are the people that really push me to do better?
That's an interesting question, because I can't really cite one specific person to be, my inspiration, because there's so many people that inspire me to do what I do. As far as like waking up every day and doing the best that I could do and stuff, like I look at people who are not even YouTubers, right? Like I look at Vince McMahon from WWE, who famously like only gets like 2 or 3 hours of sleep every night and goes to work out, and
I thought you were gonna say Chris Jericho.
Well, Chris Jericho is kind of part, by osmosis affected by Vince McMahon, right? Like in a way, like the reason why The Rock is so successful and John Cena and stuff is because of Vince McMahon's work ethic. And given that I never grew up with a dad, like, not to say that I see Vince as a dad. That's kind of weird. But like, I felt like that he has the right kind of work ethic in order to, to kind of at least mimic and then maybe apply to my life, because I find myself, because I work for myself and for the YouTube channel and a podcast, that nobody else is going to hold me accountable for all the things that I do. So I have to be the one accountable for the videos coming out, the podcasts coming out, making sure there's at least one podcast and one video coming out every week. Back in the day when I wasn't really passionate about work, I was kind of lazy about that, to be quite honest. But now that I am my own boss, I have to, basically like kind of make sure that I am held accountable, that I'm actually doing, everything that I can in order to make things, the best possible way, but that's like very specific, right? Like that's work ethic kind of stuff.
Sure.
And, I can lump, of course, Chris Jericho in that, Arnold Schwarzenegger. But as far as like style, for YouTube and stuff, like I would probably say, a lot of my inspirations actually come from movies, if you can believe that.
Yeah, I can believe it.
And like as far as my writing style goes, like oddly enough, like the one name that keeps popping up in my brain as I'm thinking about how to answer your question is Aaron Sorkin. And
interesting.
And Aaron Sorkin is responsible for, for The West Wing, which I never watched, oddly enough, but the one piece of work that I am very familiar with Aaron Sorkin is The Social Network. And that's also a collaboration between him, Trent Reznor, who does the soundtrack, by the way, and David Fincher. And David Fincher is a director that I absolutely love. Like, he does a lot of...
Too.
Yeah, he does a lot of really great films. There were 2 films that I didn't like. I think he did Alien 3 and Zodiac. I think those are the only 2 films I didn't like, but in case people out there don't know, he did Fight Club, he did The Game with Michael Douglas. I love that movie. Seven, of course, and of course The Social Network.
Great movie. Fight Club is awesome.
Yeah. And
to be fair, though, he himself admitted that he didn't like Alien 3.
Yeah. yeah, because that wasn't his work.
I heard good things about Zodiac, though.
Yeah, I don't care much for the pacing of that movie, to be quite honest. But but going back to like the inspiration,
I bet I'm gonna watch it and I'm gonna love it and I'm gonna be like, shut up, Alex.
Well, maybe I just need to rewatch it, right? Because I do have the Blu-ray. So obviously, if I have the Blu-ray, I at some point loved it, right? But if you
on some level, yeah, you still probably have some admiration for it.
Exactly. But kind of going back to those 2 specifically, like Aaron Sorkin, has a very interesting way of writing. He has a very kind of like punchy way of writing dialogue where, and I don't know if you've ever heard of this, Daniel, but like Aaron Sorkin is very anal retentive about his dialogue to the point where nobody can improvise anything. You have to say what he has on paper. There's no deviation.
That reminds me of Kevin Smith.
Yeah. But Aaron Sorkin, though, like if you read his dialogue or even listen to it, right, it has a very actiony, kind of feel to it. Like because of the words that he uses, it's almost like watching an action movie, but they're using words. Does that make sense at all?
Sure.
Yeah. And you combine that with the kind of, directorial talents that David Fincher has, where he has really harsh shadows and stuff and very kind of visual and great framing of the characters and stuff. That, like, I feel like those are the two people that really inspired me to do, like the things that I do for the YouTube channel. And that might sound really weird because when you look at my my videos and stuff, the last thing you're going to think of is Aaron Sorkin and David Fincher. But I don't know what else to say because truthfully, like I really admire this combination of people, and that's why that's why I look for their work.
Just because you're inspired by something, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to emulate it.
That's true. That's true too.
Now, one more thing I want to ask is, what game do you think represents you the best? Like, what is a game that you can think of? It's not necessarily your favorite, although it can be. But what is a game that that you would recommend someone to play in the pursuit of understanding your taste the most?
That's easy. That's Persona 4 Golden.
Oh, okay.
I don't even need to think about that. Because let's remove all personal bias about the game aside, because I know that there's some people who feel that it's got some things that are missing and stuff like that. It's not really like why I like it, but basically, like the reason why I say Persona 4 Golden equivocally is because of how it manages to frame stereotypes with the reality of context. And one of my big things as a person is I want to provide as much context as possible when talking about certain things, right? Let me give you an example. Most video game reviews out there, and this is not a knock against anybody else, okay? I want to be clear. Will have a 15-minute video talking about one game, and they go into detail into everything, systems, combat, and all that stuff, which is great because it provides a lot of context to why the score for that game is the way that it is because of that review. In my case, like I like to compartmentalize that so that way people who just care about a review, not knowing about the systems and all that stuff, have a choice of whether they want to involve themselves and learn about the systems, which is typically its own separate video, and then and then watch the review. What I mean to say is that there's many different approaches to something, but the most important thing is that you're able to provide context as to your views and and your motivations. In Persona 4, the reason why that is so interesting to me is because when I played that game, I was so pessimistic about JRPGs. Like, I thought, man, it sucks that Final Fantasy is, going down in the dumps. There is absolutely no way another a JRPG out there has the complexity to be able to deliver, like, a great story with some awesome characters and stuff. And upon getting Persona 4, every single character was depicted in some sort of stereotype whatsoever, right? Like, Rise is like an idol and stuff like that. Kanji is like this gangsta punk dude. Yosuke is this, kind of like your best friend kind of guy. There's the tomboyish girl. There's the ultra traditional Japanese girl. I could go on and on. But what Persona 4 did was they basically destroyed the stereotype. as part of the story. You know, like every single thought that you had with every single person in that is part of your party and stuff was completely obliterated because of the story. You know, and it actually,
I agree with that.
yeah. And it delves so much deeper into each character's backstory that by the time you finish the game, if you'd done all the social links, you intimately knew their individual motivations and why they're doing this for themselves and why they're really, what is really like their personal, trouble and stuff like that, their personal challenge growing up. And
yeah, and the great thing about the game is that it ties everything together with like the grander theme of accepting yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If I'm to use one word to describe Persona 4, that's identity, right? Because it's so crazy too, right? To think about how perfect the framing device was for Persona 4, because if you think about like growing up as a teenager, that was when you started forming your sense of identity, and to set that alongside this serial killer fantastical thing, it was just like the marriage of two perfect ideas into one. And and not to say that I don't appreciate all the other Persona games, I actually love them as well, but Persona 4 did something not only for me personally that was like really really amazing, which basically said like, yeah, look, by the way, there's more other cooler RPGs than Final Fantasy out there, by the way, but also like showed that regardless of how limited your tools are, right? Because that you could still deliver like a really compelling narrative, and honestly, like from a creator standpoint, like a content creator standpoint, I've always lived by that rule where even though I don't have a lot, I know how to use as much of what I have in order to make the best possible video or podcast and stuff out there. And I think that's really like the value of Persona 4 Golden to me.
All right. I think that's awesome. I was surprised that you came up with an answer so quickly. I thought that would have given you I thought that was more going to be a harder question for you, but no, you like bam. Persona 4. It's like, okay.
Yeah, it was totally. I don't know. Like, I just feel strongly about that game. So,
no, fair enough.
Yeah,
but I think that's all the questions that I have for you.
Okay, cool. So, anyways, hopefully everybody has learned enough about Daniel and I and this little show and stuff. And this is not your typical, hour-long podcast, so to speak. So we are going to end it just a tiny bit early today. But hopefully there's a lot of information here that you all can ingest and stuff and maybe listen to twice because, I think we talked about a lot of very interesting things here. And before we go, I again want to thank the people at Enhanced Games for letting us use the Tetris Effect soundtrack, at least part of it and stuff, for the opening and closing for our show. And Daniel, do you want to tell people how they can find you and stuff, and what else they can do with you? And I don't know how to end that, to be honest.
Absolutely. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Shintai Reviews. Go ahead, feel free to contact me if you have any questions or you just want to chat about whatever. Twitter is a great way to do it. And if you want to find my YouTube channel, it is Daniel Santos. If you're having trouble finding me, you could also look me up as Shintai Reviews, and I mostly do video essays, and occasionally I'll do very in-depth reviews. I'm working on one right now, actually. That's either that big one, which is Tales of Zestiria, is coming out next. It's going to be either that or a video on Paratopic. So, yeah.
Okay. And of course, you can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/mybacklogbattle. As far as social media, you can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/mybacklogbattle and on Instagram at Instagram/mybacklogbattle. The content that I post on Twitter and my Instagram account are very different. On Instagram, it's a lot of like really fun stuff. Like I tell you like about, games that are coming soon, their release dates. If there's a game that's delayed, I tell you that. All with like a little cool graphic and stuff. And of course, I ask some really fun stuff like, have you played Nier Automata, for example? And it's a very simple kind of interaction. It's, very colorful, very visual, in fact. And in Twitter, I usually update you guys on videos that I'm making and stuff. And a lot of the times, I talk about like video games as well and share other people's work because there's a lot of people who have some really amazing stuff. But lastly, email us at podcast@mybacklogbattle.tv because we want to hear like what you guys think of this first episode of For the Love of Video Games. And of course, if you want to join our community, which are comprised of a lot of RPG fans, Japanese game fans, and all sorts of people, join us at bit.ly/BBA Discord. Actually, there's two links, bit.ly/BBA Discord, but the other one is fine too, bit.ly/BB Army Discord. That's BB as in boy, okay? Again, that's bit.ly/BB Army Discord. The other one works too, but let's use this one. At any rate, thank you very much for joining us for this episode, and we hope to see you again next week. Because you know why we do this, right? It's because it's all for the love of video games. Thanks a lot, take care, and enjoy the rest of your week. See ya.